time is the most valuable asset that we have and is irreplaceable. You can't ever buy time or have more time.
Welcome back to Sally Speaks Mindset. I am so thrilled today to have not only an amazing woman, Carrie Maxey here, but she's also my niece. And I could tell you she's one of the people that has really inspired me throughout my life as I've watched her journey. She is the co-partner, managing partner of Maxey Group Enterprises, an LLC, and she has a very varied background in business, trades, and in healthcare. And that combines, from my perspective, it's really an excellent set of skill sets and her ability and her drive and why she uses her mindset to actually help her move through a lot of the challenges in her life. She works with her partner and husband, Jake Maxey, and they've owned and operated a residential and commercial landscaping company for over 15 years. And I can tell you that I believe that Carrie's a big player in that and creating the financial success of that company and the growth of it. And they're currently in the process of acquiring a pool service and remodeling business in Central Florida. So they're going to be leaving Canada and heading down to Florida, which is number one, a big move to begin with, but also to be able to start a business down there and move down to Florida with their family. And she has an excellent understanding of the essential services business, the operations, the budgeting, the sales, the growth management. So I know today is going to be really important for so many people that are considering moves like this or that are in this process and that they're really wanting to learn from someone that's walked in their shoes or is walking in the shoes that they choose to walk in. So welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. Great to be here, Auntie Sally. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. I'm a big fan. Carrie also is, as you can see from the background, I don't know if we'll have the background in there or not, but she is a mom of two. And one of her children Cole is actually an elite athlete in motocross. So they're always on the road. They've just come from a competition this weekend and they'll be out again, I'm sure. And they do a lot of competitions in not just Canada, but in the US. So Cole has had so much of a positive effect on the family as well. And I know that the drive that Carrie and Jake have has played a role in Cole's success as well. So it's really fun to have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's not only working with their own personal and business, but also with their family and creating success within the family so that legacy can continue. So I'm really proud of that.
Well, thank you.
So when you first started your career, you were in the field of mental health and specifically crisis intervention. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey and what drove you to get into that role and what were the benefits and the pros and cons that you found within that journey?
Sure, absolutely. So growing up, my parents raised me to go to school and get a degree and get a career. Don't waste time in other positions and jobs. Get your smart and go to school. So I had my sights set on becoming a psychologist when I was in high school and spent a lot of energy and time working towards that goal and getting a degree and then getting a postgraduate degree as well in addictions counseling and found that field of mental health and psychology to be absolutely fascinating. And I couldn't wait to get in it. And I spent my teenage years and young adulthood years also just looking around me at all the different family dynamics and psychology of my friends and their families, and it just intrigued me so much. So I jumped into that right out of college. I actually got a job within 6 months in that field and in crisis work. So I started out as a crisis worker, which is a really demanding job within mental health. And that is immediate intervention for folks who are experiencing a whole array of different mental health concerns and issues where they're urgent. They need urgent care, but they're not at the point of needing hospitalization and can be supported within the community. So it was a community crisis role. It included 24/7 crisis telephone line. So people calling a 1-800 number more or less and seeking support when they were suicidal or having psychosis or family members were suicidal or having psychosis or they were intoxicated, all kinds of things. would come through that line. Children, supporting children who were having mental health concerns at school or at home. So we would have that. And then we also had a short-term crisis bed program where people would come and stay with us for a few days. And then we also did mobile support in the community. So we go out to people's homes and support them in crisis. And then we also had a police co-response unit where I would actually ride in a police car with an officer and we would respond to police calls. So these were calls that came in through 911. So they were emergency, but they were dispatched to us because they required more intensive community support from a social worker. I started out in direct service as the crisis worker, and I always have my sights on what I can do next. So within 5 years, I went into management of that program. And I had some maternities in between, but I spent 14 years in that career. But eventually I got to the point, especially within management, where there's a lot of red tape and politics. Although it was a community mental health charitable organization, still so many politics, and I became burnt out. And I realized rather quickly that it wasn't where I wanted to spend my entire career.
Number one, congratulations and thank you for being that support for the people that really needed you in the community when you were in those roles. Because
No,
that
thank you.
is a really important thing. And I think there's more and more awareness today about mental health than there has been for centuries. And I think it's definitely very valuable work that you did throughout your time. Because if you just imagine you saved one life, how many others did you save? By just being in that position and being that resource for them, to be that neutral resource as opposed to somebody that was a family member and judging and things along that type of line, because we know there is a lot of that. So thank you so much for your service in that area. Now, that leads me to think about, because of your background, what was the mindset that you adapted to be able to move forward in making a decision to leave that career, but also to go into the business careers and create your own business with Jake? Because I think a lot of that mindset allows you to be able to really take control of your future and see what that potentiality is. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Absolutely. Alongside building this career in mental health and seeking out various degrees and whatnot, I always had an entrepreneurial spirit ever since I was young as well. I did many other jobs while I did that job full time. While I was young, I most often there was one point when I was working 3 full-time jobs all at the same time
Wow.
because I needed to get ahead. Jake and I, we didn't come from affluent backgrounds. And my partner, Jake, he was actually homeless when he was a teenager. At the age of 16, he was completely homeless. He dropped out of high school and he began working for others on trades and where he could find a job at that young age. And I started working as well when I was about 15 in a bakery. So I had needed to support myself through school to obtain the degrees, which I'm very proud of the fact that I paid for my entire schooling by myself. And I lived away from home while I did it, 3.5 hours away from home. I moved out when I was 19. So my parents are wonderful, wonderful supports to me emotionally, but financially, it wasn't something that they could always support us with. So anyways, along the way, I always had aspirations to earn my own money, and I worked a lot of jobs, and I'm a person who likes to observe and study and figure out people's success and then reverse engineer it for myself. Yeah. So I worked in a bakery. I worked in restaurants, serving, bartending, waitressing. Now it's called serving. I worked in parks and rec. I also really enjoy physical labor, which is strange, but true. And so when I was in university, I worked 5 summers in ice rinks and in parks and rec, cutting grass and driving tractors and driving big trucks and hauling trailers. And it was the best summers of my life. And I would do that all day. I would work from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then I would go to the restaurant and serve from 3:30, 4 o'clock until 11 p.m. and then do it all over again the next day, 6 days a week. I missed a lot. And it's funny, I missed out on a lot of teenage and young adulthood life. But now at this point in my life, I don't feel like I missed out on anything. I knew at that time it was hard to make the decisions to say, no, I can't go here, there, or anywhere because I have to work. But boy, was it ever worth it.
Yes.
Hard
And
to
it's
know
that
that
work
when you're
ethic.
young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Developing that work ethic from a young age allows you to see what the fruits of that can be if you're committed to actually achieving the things that you want to achieve in your life.
Exactly, exactly. You always have to be thinking big picture, which is a
Mhm.
challenge for a lot of folks. So, alongside me working, Jake was working as well, and he worked a ton of jobs, but he always had a hard time working for people. He knew he needed to work for himself. Jake, we've always been each other's biggest supports, and he always also had an entrepreneurial spirit. So he started the landscaping business when he was in his early 20s, and he built it slowly but surely. He built it, and he got more and more work and created more and more networks, and struggled upon struggled, started from nothing, but found ways to buy used equipment, fix it up, resell it, buy more, and just build. And I supported him with that. So together, I supported him with a lot of the things that at that time I had a better skill set for, such as the accounting and advertising and business management pieces, so that he could be out in the field doing the
Mhm.
jobs. I helped him with hiring people here and there, although he did at that time the majority of the work of his business on his own because I was very busy doing many of my own other projects. But the mindset was just, I just always wanted to get to the point where I could work for myself. I just, at that point in my life, didn't know how or what that would look like. And at that point, it wasn't going to be working with Jake full time. we we needed that separation as we were young and building and trying to form a relationship. It's a lot to also be working together. So as much as we were supporting each other. There was no way I was going to work with him, and he didn't want me to work with him. So I explored many other avenues while I was a crisis worker and managing the crisis program. With your support, explored the finance industry
Yeah.
and got quite far along the introductory stages of that, but then just decided it wasn't going to be the right fit for me. I did that with real estate as well. I went into the real estate course and pretty well got 90% through that as well, and then decided it just wasn't going to be right for me. I messed around with a few MLMs, multi-level marketing companies,
Mhm.
tried out a few of them, but realized very quickly there's no money to be made a lot of the time in those, unless you're lucky enough to get in on the ground and you can build a lot of networks underneath. But the ones that I had tried were already pretty established. So it just didn't seem like the amount of time and energy I was putting in was worth the payout.
Mhm.
So I just kept exploring and I just kept looking and praying and figuring things out, and then babies along the way. And it really comes down to wanting freedom, not wanting more. Time is the most valuable asset that we have and is irreplaceable. You can't ever buy time or have more time. But I know I wanted more time once I had the kids. And I was looking at Jake, who was gaining back more of his time at that point in his career and in building his business. And a lot of the young men around us were the same. And I remember a pivotal conversation I had with two of my girlfriends one night. And we were just like, how is it that all these boys around us
Yeah.
have started their own businesses and they're all working for themselves? We're in our mid 30s now. And one of my girlfriends was a school teacher, still is. And my other girlfriend at that time was working towards building a career. She had been working in disabilities with children, and she was actually going back to school to get her degree to switch into becoming a therapist. And so we're mid careers, starting to get 15 or so years in and thinking we are working really hard and for others to make
Yes.
money for others. Although we're working in social services field, so it's not the same kind of corporation feel where we're making profits, but we knew we were churning and burning and working really hard for other people. And how come we hadn't figured out the secret sauce to do that for ourselves? And so, yeah, my girlfriend whose husband or who was a teacher, her husband was a carpenter and he's having great success. My husband, landscaping, and having great success at that point. My other friend, her husband was a tennis coach and having really good success with that. I looked around and I thought, wow, how come I never thought about getting into trades? I really enjoyed working physically and that aspect of work as well. It was one of the best jobs I had out of all of them and so rewarding. How come I had never thought when I was young to go to school to learn a trade? I had never equated a tradesperson as becoming a business owner back then because
Right.
it wasn't really something we were taught. You're taught you become a tradesman and you still work for someone else. That wasn't the example I was seeing around me. So Jake and I started talking a lot more. And as I said, I was becoming more and more burnt out with the social work and having a really hard time managing it and the demands of it. It was quite a demanding job, long shifts, on call 24/7 for staff and just really stealing my time from my family and my kids and also the emotional damage, the vicarious trauma that you suffer and the secondary trauma that you suffer when you're working in those positions. It really begins to take a toll on your world perspective, and I knew that was happening to myself, and I knew I didn't wanna raise my kids with this jaded perspective of how the world actually is. So Jake and I started talking more, and we came to an agreement that perhaps I could fit. He was expanding pretty rapidly back in 2018, had hired quite a few staff and was really struggling to manage those staff, where I was managing 43 staff in a very intense environment. And I said to him, I can do this for you. I can come in and I can manage these people, and together our two skill sets, let's give it a try. So that's what we did. I quit my job and it was terrifying at that time because we had always looked at my career and my job as being the stable income to support us because his growing a business, there's a lot of instability in that. You don't know if you're going to get the next job or the next contract. And so mine was the stable salary, but we said, if we don't give it a try, we'll never know. So we did it and I joined him and yeah, we haven't looked back.
That's an incredible journey. So thank you for sharing that because there's so many highlights within that that allows an individual to say, is it okay to assess what I'm currently doing and make a shift? Because most people get so tied to exactly what they have been doing, thinking that's the only option for them. But yet inside, they're yearning for something different, but don't know how to be able to even believe in themselves to take that next step. I heard a lot of fabulous nuggets, and that's one of them with believing in yourself that there was another option and seeing around you what other people were doing. It's saying, why is this not an option for me? But I also liked that you're very similar to me because I also did the finance, but I went through with that and had a great career with that. I studied real estate as well, didn't go forward with that. I've done the MLMs for 30 years and I've had some success with that, but it's not something that really drives me the way that the work that I do now or the work I was doing in my corporate were fulfilling me. So I think that the ability to be open to possibility, but not feel like a failure because you didn't go through with what you had already taken on is a great message for a lot of people because most people think if I go into something and study something, let's just talk as a realtor, I go in to study that and I get the results, but I just don't feel like it's the right fit for me. It's okay. Because the knowledge you've actually gained from studying both finance and real estate has helped you to be successful, both financially and in real estate, because of
Right.
and what you've done with that. So it
Right.
gave you skill sets that you may not think you've applied to a career, but you've applied to your life. And I want
Correct.
people to
Yeah.
understand it's okay to make a decision to go down a path and not feel like a failure because you didn't follow through with it to the end. Because it's not always the journey that we're supposed to be on, but it leads us to that next journey. So, like you're saying to Jake, I managed 40 people. I can help you with the managing of the people. And so that's a skill set you brought forward from one of your careers that allowed you to step into the business, but then also bringing you back to your passion that you had from when you were in university of working in a so-called trade or in the outdoor abilities to work with people or in different environments allowed you to be able to now say, I think this might be something I want to explore too. And
Yes.
being able to openly have that conversation with your spouse, because like you said, I was the breadwinner or perceived as the bigger breadwinner at that time to keep the family going while we were building the business. But allowing yourself to see that there was a lot of opportunity when you team together to grow bigger and faster and to bring your individual strengths to the table.
Hmm.
So from a mindset perspective, there's a lot of nuggets in there. And I hope that people will take some notes from this conversation, because it really, your journey really outlines what a lot of people are going through today and trying to figure out what that solution is to them to have the success that they're wanting for themselves and their family. But yet we always get the judgment from others to say,
Oh,
why
yes.
can't you do that? So tell us about that. Did you get
Absolutely.
judgment from others when you were switching from your full-time career where you were very successful over into going into business with Jake?
Oh, absolutely. So one thing I've learned in life is to only share when I am confident and ready, and after I've made the decision. Because yeah, I faced a lot of questions and worries, and yeah, everyone in my support and everyone even at my previous job that I couldn't tell many people that I was going to be leaving. But yeah, people thought it was a wild idea. Why would you spend all this time? If you're looking for a change, you should be going for a director. And my boss at that point had told me she wanted to groom me to become a director in that agency. And that was my next career goal that she had put in place for me at that point. And it was actually, that was a moment that propelled me forward to get out of there, because when she said that to me in a supervision, my stomach fell through the floor. I just remembered that I just felt in that moment that was not what I wanted whatsoever. I did not want to spend the next 10 to 15 years building a career as a director and
Mm.
then even moving up from there. It just wasn't what I wanted. So it was confirming and validating for me to have that reaction emotionally, but I didn't tell anyone. And that's I in terms of that mindset, I do think sometimes when you share the decisions or what you're contemplating, people who typically make safer choices or think of life as being led in maybe only one way, they get scared for you or scared on your behalf and try to
Mm.
talk you out of what it is you want to do. And that's not helpful. It's limiting, and I don't want to live my life within limitations or the constraints of other people's perspectives. And I'm actually a Zennial, I think it's called, which is really interesting. It's a tiny generation right in between Generation X and millennials. If you look it up, it's this 5-year period. They call us the Zennials because we have the work ethic of the Generation X and yet the dreaminess of millennials.
There you
And
go.
so people in this tiny little generation, we work really hard, but we also dream really big and have the tendency
Mm.
to chase those dreams with the work ethic behind us. We grew up with no internet access until we were in high school. And then all of a sudden we had internet, where we're
Mm.
that generation in between a lot of modern changes. And it's just had a really big impact, I think, on us. But I think that's what makes me a little bit different sometimes, and Jake as well, than some of our family and supports. But I'm getting off target here. But to say you're absolutely right, I think other people's limiting beliefs can really hold you back. And when I had told people that I was going to leave that career, I didn't tell anyone until I was one foot out the door, until I was actually leaving. My parents were devastated. They thought it was a crazy idea. They said, "How could you go to university? You paid your way through. You spent 6 years getting those degrees and diplomas and 12 years, 14 years working to build that career." And I was very well known in the area I was working with or working within by police forces, local hospitals, local community agencies. And yeah, everyone was dying to know where I was going next. And when they found out that I was going to go to my husband's landscaping company, And they couldn't believe it. People were shocked. Why would you throw away your career? Was what I was told. And you'll be back. A lot of people said to me, "You'll be back." And I said, "No, I won't."
And you did.
I've outgrown this. This is not where I want to be.
Well, I think that whole story and the journey in that is that people are going to judge other people based off of, like you said, their own limiting beliefs. So if they would not have done that, and it's not in their comfort zone, they will try to protect you by saying no. So one of the things that I've learned over my lifetime, because I've made a lot of pivots in careers, but also in where I live in the country and the way that we choose to live, it really has been us making the decision without really broadcasting it. Because the one thing I've learned is that you need to surround surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that can see that potential, and not surround yourself with the people that are going to put their beliefs and their limits upon you, because that only stops you from moving forward. So you need to surround yourself. Like you were saying, I was seeing all of these people around Jake that were having success as an entrepreneur. We're surrounding yourself, not purposely, but just through osmosis of what Jake was doing and the circle he was around, and seeing that potential when others couldn't see what you saw and they couldn't feel what you were feeling. But so often we get caught by other people's beliefs preventing us from going to where we truly want to be.
Absolutely.
And that's what I see over and over with most of the people that come to work with me, is that they've allowed other people's opinions to guide them on what they truly want to do. And that's where we get caught in the trap of never fulfilling what we truly have as our desire and our purpose and what brings us joy and financial abundance in our careers.
Exactly.
So it's a very important issue. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's so important to not let others' beliefs control your decisions. But yet we go to those people closest to us because we trust them and we hope that they're going to give it to us. So don't judge them based off of that. That's just how their beliefs are. And you just need to be true to your own beliefs and start surrounding yourself with other people that can see that vision. I want to put that in there because we don't want to judge our families or our close friends for saying those things to us. But at the same time, we need to be confident in our own decisions and our own path that we're trying.
Exactly. Exactly. Inform instead of ask. That's what I do. I inform people of the decisions that I've made after I've made them, and instead of ask.
Who the ones are that you could confide in while you're in that process, because you learn who those people are that are going to support and encourage and come up with ideas and help you to brainstorm or to lead you to other resources that would help you to get that success faster. You start to learn that over time. Be aware of that, because it's really important from a mindset perspective to be true to yourself and live your own dreams and your own life. And I know there's a stat out there, and I believe it's over between 70 and 80% of people choose to live within a 15-kilometer basis of where they grew up. So they're even afraid to move outside of that locale that they've been raised in to be able to do something that's outside of the norm that the family hasn't done. And to me, that shows just in that stat how limiting our beliefs are, as far as we can't even see beyond the boundaries of our own community where we were born and raised to see
exactly.
And so tell me a little bit about this move to Florida. So having said that, so you're in Canada right now, and you and your family have made a decision to move to Florida this year coming up. So tell us a little bit about why that came about. What was your decision around that? And why is it that you're not going to be staying within that 15 kilometers anymore of where you were born and raised?
Yeah, I joined the business with Jake, and it was 2020 when I started with him, and COVID hit. COVID for us in our sector was a gold mine. And I think that's true for many people in trades and construction. We refer to it as the gold rush of COVID. There was lots of money to be had, lots of work to be had, and it was fantastic. And we could find quite a few workers. That the toughest part was there was no supplies. But for us in landscaping, it didn't impact us as much as it did some other trades like carpentry and whatnot. We exploded in those years, but Jake and I knew it was limited. Because he had been in business long enough. We knew fluctuations in business and what was typical and what was atypical. And those years, we knew they would come crashing. And again, looking at what's going on around us, paying a lot of attention to what's going on, seeing prices soaring, equipment, all of these things, and then starting to see things change and turn around and costs soaring and taxes starting to increase. And there's been a lot. Your audience would be quite aware, the ones here in Canada, anyways. I know you have a worldwide audience, but there's been a lot of change for small business, especially here in Ontario in the last few years. Alongside with all of that, all of those fluctuations and things going on within the business world, and struggles with insurance has gone through the roof. And we have Cole, our son, as you mentioned earlier in the interview, who became a budding motocross competitor. So that's a very extreme sport. That's another area in my life where people have been not quite as supportive and try to talk us out of allowing our son to compete in such a dangerous and extreme sport. But he loves it. So we've been on that journey as well, mostly since 2019, and he's just got better and better. We were really lucky with that during COVID because it's an outdoor sport. A lot of the provincial league was able to still run and we were able to still compete. So that was really cool. So having said that, Cole's motocross took us down to the state of Florida for training the last 2 springs. We'd never been to Florida otherwise. It wasn't somewhere that we'd really planned to go on a trip or a vacation. We usually go to all inclusive, so mommy gets a break.
Yeah.
But the last 2 springs, we headed down for training in Florida. And when we were there, we just fell in love. It's just such an awesome state. And the way in which things are carried out in Florida felt very similar to how it used to be here at home back in 2017, 2018. The prices, their economy is a little bit different than ours. Factors. After last spring, not this past spring before, with our business here, so many things have changed for a while. We've been thinking about what else could we do. We both got to the point, Jake's burnt out now of landscaping and snow plowing and running this landscaping business. He's been doing it where he's at that point in his career where he doesn't want to do this anymore, just like the point I got into with mine and social work. And I'm going to support him with that because I know what that feels like and how refreshing and recharging it is to do something different. And so he and I had been talking for months and months over the last couple of years what we could do, what other business could we do. We looked here in Ontario. We thought about selling our business and trying to buy something different here. But it just didn't make sense financially. There just wasn't any opportunities that we could really see that would put us into the same place that we are now financially. And then once we were down in Florida and we got the idea of, well, how could we move to Florida? We started to research and look into and see what it would be like to buy a business in Florida. We figured out pretty rapidly that we could make a change and we could buy a business down there that was somewhat similar but different. And we could get a fresh start and do something there. And we'd also be able to support Cole's career to expand even further in motocross and give him way more opportunities because motocross is very US based, give him way more opportunities to expand and keep pushing and perhaps go pro. So it checked quite a few boxes for us as a family and as a couple and in our separate careers. And yeah, we've just been working towards making that happen.
That's incredible because that's a big decision. Number one, to move the whole family across the country or not across the country, but out of the country and go to a different place. But it's also when you both aligned, like you were saying with Jake, he was getting to that burnout. You
Yes.
had been there before, so you could at least empathize with what was going on and then being open to have discussions with each other to just say, what's possible? What could we do differently? What would make us feel more excited about this next venture? Well, could it serve the family, Cole in particular, and making sure that everything is aligned in a way that's going to serve not only whatever you're choosing to do, the clients that you're choosing to serve, but also both of you. and your children, to be able to give them the life that you're wanting to give them the opportunity to explore. Because I know I watch Cole's successes all over North America, and you were just there this weekend. Another one. I thought the season must be over already, but it's not. And yet he's winning all sorts of awards and being very successful. And so I just love it when the parents also engage in that success for their children alongside their own. And because of that, I know because of the way you and Jake actually mold yourself and what you choose to do and how you're mentoring Cole is because of how you've treated yourself in your businesses and in your life. Because children become successful in their chosen field or their sports to become those elites or pros because of the parents that are behind them and helping them to get to that level. So really proud of you both for that, but also really proud of watching Cole and the successes he has. And then you have beautiful Brooke, who just having a blast at all of these events as well, your daughter. And so it's really fun to be able to see her as well, thriving because of the leadership she's seeing within the family.
Thank you.
So now, in all of this, as a woman, as a mom, as a business owner, as a wife, tell me about self-care practices.
Yeah, my days are full, very full. And this period of my life where we're in this transition from here, Canada and landscaping and moving to Florida, I'm actually getting a little bit of a break. We've been really good at setting ourselves up. I'm a planner, and we knew that this would take several months to achieve. So we were able to slow down our calendar for landscaping with intention, thinking we had initially thought that we were going to completely close down the landscaping company here in Canada, but we've since decided we're going to keep it running at least for another season. But all that to say, I have very busy days. And so I intentionally put time within each day to take care of myself. The biggest thing for me and for Jake as well, but I'll only speak to myself, is exercise and working out. I started when I was 26, exercising daily for at least 20 minutes, but I like to do a full 40 every morning. I'll wake up according to my day as early as I need to and get my workout in. And it's almost meditative for me. It really impacts my overall mental health. It keeps me focused. I work out with using an app, which is actually an MLM that I also explored at one point, but it's an app. And so that I'm working out with a program that has a coach that's more or less running it. And for me, that's been really helpful to have that versus just going to the gym on your own. Jake goes to the gym on his own and does his own routine there. For me, working out with a guided program and hearing the positivity from the trainer, keep going, keep pushing, and you're halfway through and you've got this in your tank. And all of those positive messages really impact my mental health and my motivation to get through my days and to keep pushing for what I want. And so that is a big piece of my day-to-day self-care. And then also just really the allowing myself to really look for the moments of joy every single day that do appear in and amongst a lot of setbacks and a lot of challenges, and just always looking for that lesson. What is the lesson in the setback? To me, I call that self-care because analyzing and looking back and really thinking through why things happen a certain way and how you've overcome them and appreciating that. I think that's a really important piece that a lot of people don't spend the time and energy to focus on. You just get wrapped up in your day to day and you just keep going. But I do try to, with intention, talk to my kids and my partner and my own self about all of those things that come up on a day-to-day basis that challenge us emotionally. And that's how we take care of ourselves. And that's how we keep our heads high and we keep positive and we keep happy by working through all the stuff.
Yeah. And as you're talking about that, it just reminds me of how so many people might come home from work with that frustration and not share it, but they carry that energy, right? They carry that frustration, they carry that energy, and then it spreads throughout the family because people can feel that when they walk in the room and they're like, oh, stay away from dad today or stay away from mom, right? And it's important to be able to understand that it's okay to have conversation around what has happened, what you could do differently, and how to actually support each other in your journey to be able to have that mindset and that success. And then also to emulate that for your children. So they see that challenges aren't a nasty thing. They're just another opportunity to grow, to learn, and to pivot if necessary. And that to me is one of the things that I think a lot of people that I've noticed are sometimes not really stepping into that fully to understand that it's okay to have conversations. And then it also, what it does when you do have those conversations is really reduces the anxiety and the emotional quotient that people carry with them. And of course, with what you've done in the past, you're probably an expert at that more so than most people, but it's such a critical part of relationship and a critical part of
Absolutely.
business. Because for sometimes
Absolutely.
it's easier for us to have a conversation like that in business, but not with our family members. So
Absolutely.
that to me is one of the critical elements that as you're learning and growing, that it's okay to just have a conversation and it doesn't have to get heated. It's just having a conversation about what's happening between you and your spouse or the workplace and empathizing with people, just like you did with Jake when he was getting burnt out in his business. You're like, been there. I've been there. Let's
Yeah.
do this. What can we do? And the children are always listening in the background, whether you think they are or not. They're
No, they're always listening.
they're always observing. They're always listening. So we're setting them up to understand how to have those communications in their adult life when we have those at home. And that's something that I really think because we're all so busy these days and we're rushing, it can easily be pushed under the carpet and end up being in an argument or a fight or disagreement within the family. So I really enjoy that you're saying this out loud that it's okay to have those conversations,
Hmm.
work through them as a family or a couple or whoever it might be, because it is critical. It is very critical to our mindset and to that movement forward. And it builds the relationship so much stronger.
Absolutely. Communication is key. And that was one of the skills that I did learn in my previous career, especially once I stepped into management. It's funny because being a crisis worker is all about communicating with the client and pulling out the areas that they need support in. But when you move up to managing staff, it's a whole nother ball game. But yeah, learning to communicate still and speak with people and yeah, this whole move for us is about change management. And so when we started way back in January, we sat down as a family and I said, okay, you guys, this is going to be a big change. And here's some things that we can expect along the way. We're going to have moments where we're just going to be doubting ourselves and you and like the kids, like you're going to have times when you're not going to want to move and you're going to have times when you do want to move and it's going to be hard to get rid of your stuff and it's going to be exciting to get new stuff and move to different places. And it's going to be, we're living in a trailer right now and we're trying to prepare them for that. It's going to be a challenge when you don't have your bedrooms anymore and you're sharing that small space. How are we going to deal with that when it comes? And it's okay to feel angry. A lot of those you said, I'm sure I have a lot more of skill and ability in that area because of my previous career. But even if you don't, I think it's just opening the lines of communication. And like you said, if someone's coming home in a bad mood, asking them why and not necessarily taking it personally or assuming it's about you.
Mhm.
And vice versa. If you're coming home in a bad mood, not targeting your spouse or your kids or where you feel safe to let that anger out because you're holding on to it from somewhere where you didn't feel safe to express it at work or wherever you actually developed it. Yeah. And then that's an important part of self care. Yeah. Is just being able to talk and be heard.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that's what so many people, maybe I can say so many people, maybe I shouldn't say so many people, but a lot of people speak to respond or react as opposed to really listen.
Absolutely.
And so that's a big element as well, is just take a moment to listen and then respond because you'll be able to process it a little easier than if you just automatically respond. When someone walks in and they're upset and you're like, oh, what the heck happened to you today? Instead of just saying, take a second and say, there's something going on. How can I approach this? And so there's all sorts of different tips and tricks that we can use for that. But it's so important because we automatically tend to respond today and react without thinking before we do that. And it causes a lot of disarray and disappointment in people and just a lot of negative feelings and negative energy being spread. And people today are very sensitive to what's going on around them. And I think it's so important. And I'm so glad that we have you on today because it's nice to hear from somebody that's been in the profession as well, how to be able to handle with some of these situations and how to be more responsive in a positive manner to align with it and to understand before having a full talk about what's next and really bringing that emotion quotient down of the person that's having the challenge. And obviously, from what you've talked to us about all of the work that you did when you were on the road with the police or on the helplines, those kinds of things are what was your expertise. And so,
Right.
really appreciate you sharing that because it's so important for people to understand.